Thank you, Julie. Good morning once again, everybody. Welcome to the Committee of the Licensing Authority, held on Wednesday, the 20th of October, 2021. And I will just ask you all if you would confirm the minutes, please, held on the 21st of July. Is everybody in agreement to the minutes? Does anybody have any questions? Philip.
It's just a question around there was an item in the minutes there about security staff at licensed outlets and clubs. Had there been any issues or problems? I mean, I've not heard of any, but perhaps you could update on that.
Just to say that there is still a shortage of SIA door staff because many of the people who were employed in that industry previously have moved on to other jobs during COVID. We haven't experienced anything as yet, mainly because two of our vendors who have nightclubs also have very good connections with the SIA industry. And some of our smaller venues that do have door staff employ their own. They have a special license now, which I won't go into because I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert on the SIA. But no, at the moment, I think we've been okay. I think the thing that's going to be the test for us is going to be the big events, the bigger events that may take place next year. But at the moment, we've not heard of any problems.
Thank you, Philip. Any other comments on the minutes? Could I ask that we confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 21st of July? Could you raise your hands if you're in agreement? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, Julie, do we have any apologies?
Chairman, I have no apologies, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any urgent business. Do you, Jodie? See? And does anybody have any declarations of interest on this agenda? No. And we haven't got any non-members to address the meeting. So we will move on to item 6, which is the quarterly team update report. I shall hand over to Josie.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll try and keep it brief. As many of you will have attended the last meeting and met Alan, who is the Animal Welfare Licensing Officer, I will just update you on what's been going on with him. So we had the first in-person meeting held on the 21st of September this year, which is a Norfolk and Suffolk now Animal Welfare Licensing Officers meeting. It was supported by the leader of the council, giving a very supportive speech, and attended by the chair and vice chair of licensing. Thank you very much. Your support was greatly appreciated on the day. It was very well attended by both Norfolk and Suffolk animal licensing officers, with presentations from our horse vet at Chapel Field Vets, Norfolk Police Rural Crime Officers, and the RSPCA. The late afternoon session was spent with officers discussing how to progress removing adverts from unlicensed breeders and cross-border issues. The next meeting is to be held in December. Alan continues to investigate unlicensed breeders, of which there are quite a lot out there, and complaints that he receives. He's giving advice and giving warnings. He's having great success in this and has subsequently licensed approximately 5 new breeders from this, and also had a number cease advertising and trading. And just to update you, he's also now completed his animal inspector's course. So we're just waiting for the final certificate to come through to say he's now fully qualified. So the Licensing Act update is we are continuing to see an increase in temporary event notices, which is actually really reassuring because it means that people are getting on with their lives. We've got private weddings, village fetes, etc., and lots of Christmas events coming in. So it's really good to see that events are still being planned this year because the TENS just dropped off completely last year. We received virtually none. Our officers visited 2 new licensed events to check compliance with the license conditions over the summer. They were Norfolk Hall for their camping events or glamping events, and the Maui Wowie Festival. A follow-up meeting was held by the licensing team so that the safety advisory group members who wished to attend could discuss with the operator of the Maui Wowie Festival some of the minor complaints and issues from their first year in the Brecon district. Just to update, since I wrote this, we have received confirmation from the organizer of the Maui Wowie Festival that they will be returning to Breckland next summer. So we hope that that's a positive. We know there were some noise issues, but we have tried to deal with a lot of those with our colleagues, and there will obviously be a lot of pre-meetings taking place before that event takes place next year. On the back of that meeting, we have, or those events, we have created a new web page in the licensing section of the Breckland Council web pages that actually shows larger scale events that the licensing team have received notification of, either via SAG, the Safety Advisory Group, or via temporary event notice, or as part of a premises license. We continue to work with other departments on a number of complex complaint cases regarding licensed premises. That it must be said, not all of those people, all these complex cases are actually in breach of their licensing conditions. Sometimes it's other departments within the council. Temporary event notices have had limits raised from 15 to 20 notices per year and from 21 to 26 days by the government for the years of 22 and 23. So it just means that premises can have more temporary event notices in the next 2 years. Taxi licensing, the seven-week consultation on the new taxi policy was started with 6 sessions being offered to the trade to go through the changes in the policy. It was quite low attendance, but we know that word of mouth gets around quite quickly, so we weren't too disturbed by that. We have seen an increase in new applications for drivers and vehicles over the past 3 months, which is encouraging, given the number who did not renew or retired last year due to COVID. We're hearing from the police on the street that there's a shortage still of taxis available for the nighttime economy in town centres, particularly Thetford and Durham, where we really have the nighttime economy. There's still an issue with taxis not being out and about. So hopefully some of the new people that are being licensed will actually be picking up on the nighttime economy. There's obviously a trade there, so fingers crossed. We will be busy preparing for the implementation of the new taxi policy from now until January, assuming that we move forward with formal adoption of the policy today. There is much work to do in preparation for the changes, from updating forms to implementing the use of the new NAFN NR3 database, which requires us to notify all the currently licensed drivers. And other licensing updates for you are the government has extended the new pavement license from the end of September 21 to the end of September 22. So anyone with an existing license must renew under this scheme, and new applications can still be accepted. On the COVID front, obviously we're watching with anticipation what the plan B scenario might be and how that will impact all of the licensees that we deal with. So we're just keeping an eye on that at the moment. To update you, we're going out on some scrap metal site visits with the police later on in November. So I'll feedback about that at the next meeting. From April 2022, there will be changes for taxi, private hire and scrap metal license applications. Individuals, companies or partnerships applying for a license for a taxi, private hire driver, private hire operator, scrap metal site or scrap metal collector will have to complete a tax check with the HMRC. They will need to provide us with a 9-character tax code, check code, that they are given on completion of the tax check. If they don't give us the code, we're not going to be able to issue or renew their license. And we're actually having training on that this Friday with the HMRC. So it's something new coming in. And I think that's it for the updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. That was very interesting, especially on the tax side of things and working with the HMRC, because I know that was something that our animal licensing welfare officer has been looking into because of the incredibly high price that puppies have been sold for, to make sure that breeders have been declaring their earnings. And just going back to what you said about Alan Goodhall, it was an excellent officers meeting, and I have to stress that it was an officers meeting, and welcomed by the leader of the council. And I was very, very pleased to have been invited. He really has hit the ground running to bring all the officers from the other councils in Norfolk and the top of Suffolk together. And that positive will be them all working together to improve animal welfare and breeding standards. It's a first for Norfolk to have councils working together, and all the attendees were very responsive and really supportive. And we'll be looking to encourage their councils to take on an animal licensing welfare officer. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. As I said, it was very interesting with all the professional bodies that he brought to the meeting. But as I said, I have to stress that it was an officers' meeting. So as I said, I was just very pleased to have been included. Right, thank you for the update, JC. We'll move on to item 7, which is training requirements. Oh, sorry, Philip.
I just wanted to ask a question about the Wowie Festival. If they're thinking of holding it again in Bretland, is it going to be the same site? Because my concern would be that I think they'll be looking to get more attendance. And whereas this event this year went off better than I thought it would, I still think there are severe constraints around that site.
So the wash-up session that we had, they are looking to go back to the same site to answer that part of the question. The wash-up session that we had was very intense, I think is probably the best way to put it. And so obviously we'd had just a few complaints about the noise travelling. So the environmental protection team, the noise team, are basically looking at where stages are sited, how long the music is going on for, and the operator is looking at reducing potentially some of the hours later into the night, reducing that back a bit, and not having amplified music as late. But obviously the finer detail is yet to still be sorted, so I don't want to make any promises that I won't be able to have any control of. So the finer detail will be sorted out when he sends in the plan. I would imagine if the event is taking place in August, I believe, I would imagine we will get the plans and everything sort of mid to late spring. So we'll have finer detail then, but we had present fire. We'd received a submission from traffic. As I say, EP was there, licensing was there. I think opposite, I don't remember anybody else being there, but there will be an event notification that goes around to all of the safety advisory group, which covers fire and ambulance, everything. Once we know the exact firm dates and once we've got his emergency plan and things like that, that gets circulated to the safety advisory group. And the intention is that we will hold a meeting with the organizer to finally go through that. So hopefully any concerns that you've had, if you've got anything that you want to share with me outside of this meeting, that will be fine. If you've got specific concerns, then we'll try and make sure that they're addressed. Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Philip. And it's good to. Oh, sorry. I was just going to respond to Philip to say that it's good to have you on the ground here in Durham, Philip. But the only plus to come out of it is that, considering how large it was with 5,000 people, but thankfully it would have been good not to have had any complaints. But thankfully there were only 7 complaints. But as I said, it'll be helpful to have you on the ground, Philip, and liaising with the officers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just Josie mentioned that she was going out with the police authority for what's that, for us to establish scrap yards or what?
Yeah, so we're going out with the police. They've got a week in November where they are doing all different kinds of visits, but we picked up on scrap metal and have decided that we would like to go and visit all of our sites. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to give any dates now. But we will be visiting all of the scrap metal sites in Bretland that we have licensed during that period of visits with the police. And it's really just to establish that all of the conditions of the license are being met, that nothing has changed since we last went out, that kind of thing. So really just a enforcement, well, not enforcement, compliance, shall we say. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Well, that'll be an interesting an interesting venture, Josie. I can't see because the sunshine's coming through the window, but does anybody else have any questions? Gordon? No? Well, that's excellent. Thank you, Josie, for the update. And we'll move on to item 7, which is training requirements, which will be a general discussion. But I'll let Josie come in at the beginning. And the fact that many of you will have heard, I think, that James Button, solicitor, is going to be our trainer as far as licensing is concerned. He is a solicitor. He is an advisor to the Institute of Licensing. Not quite sure what other title he has as well.
Many, I'm sure.
Josie. But for those of you who are old committee members, who came to was the last training in King's Lynn, or was that the one here? No, the first one was here, wasn't it? The second one was shared between the two councils. But in my experience, he is an absolutely excellent trainer. So to those of you who are new to the committee, who may not have felt, because you haven't had the training, so therefore, if you haven't had the training, one can't sit on the licensing panels. But there are some people I know who are concerned about putting themselves forward for panels because they feel that they might not lack the experience. All I can say is that James Button will give you that experience and all the knowledge that you need to know. And so I shall look forward to that starting in January. We had hoped it would start before, but he's still doing online sessions as far as his training is concerned. And Josie and I wanted to make sure that he was in the room, which would give a much better feedback for members. So that will be happening sometime in January. We're just trying to sort out some dates at the moment, but please, do try and ensure that you come along, because it will be an absolutely excellent day. And really, I should be very surprised if anybody didn't find it informative and it's not boring. So we will move on to training requirements, and I shall hand over to.
So really just to expand a little bit on what Marion has said, basically the training is going to be 2 half days, but all in one day. So there'll be a morning and an afternoon session. One of the sessions will be on Licensing Act and the other session will be on taxi licensing. And it's going to be an overview, basically. I think the idea is of why we license, how we license, and what we have to look at. And then also what you need to consider as committee members when you're sitting on a panel or on the committee to make your decisions, to make you have a good, sound understanding of the legislation that's behind it, so that you understand the implication of those decisions that you make, and that we have to give good reasons for those decisions. So I'm anticipating it's going to be a really interesting day. I'm just looking forward to getting the date sorted.
Do you Josie, I don't know if members have any input as to whether or not they would prefer a full day or 2 half days. Does anybody have a view on it? I mean, personally, because I've got one of the furthest places to travel from in the district, I'd rather it was a day with lunch. But if anybody has any other views or feelings, please feel free to let me know. Any preference?
I agree with you. I would prefer a day, 2 halves.
Can I? Yeah, I totally agree. I think a whole day would be lovely. We can all then exchange ideas and have lunch, and it's all fresh in your mind, all done in one day.
Excellent. So we'll be looking at trying to fix a whole day up with James Button in the new year. So we'll move on to feedback and discussion on recent panel meetings. I don't know if anybody in the room has sat on any panels since we were meeting face to face again. Anybody have anything they want to add, Tina?
Yeah, I have. I think it's a couple, but very, very good. I think they went very well, to be honest. And much better, obviously, doing it face to face, because you get a lot more feeling, get more things across than you can on a Zoom. And I think they went very smoothly and enjoyable, to be honest. Learned a lot from it.
And Philip, you were on one of the panels. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it was informative, quite a difficult one, I felt. I think it came up with the right conclusion and hopefully done in the right way without, I was almost jumping to conclusions probably too quickly. So yeah, for me, it was very interesting learning process. Yeah, I think it was quite a tricky one.
Tricky one, because Tristan, you've sat on panels in the past, haven't you? So, no, not since lockdown, but I just wondered if you had anything you wanted to feed to Josie.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it's very draining because you need to absorb a heck of a lot of information in a short space of time, but very rewarding when you believe that you come up with the right outcome. And I would highly recommend that if you've not sat on a panel, that you put yourself forward to do so.
Yeah, can I just add to that? If you're not on your own making any decisions, you have the support of qualified people, the licensing team and the legal people around you. So you're not making these decisions entirely on your own, and you're in a group. So, and it is, as you say, very interesting, very informative, and you learn an awful lot from it. And it's life, and you're helping people in one way or another, and maintaining the standards that Breckland set in licensing, as you know we have to do as an authority. So I'd encourage anyone to do any training or anything, or just come along and know that you're not on your own making that decision. It helps when you're in a crowd.
That's a very valid point, actually, Tina. And just to add to those who haven't sat on a panel, that after the application has been heard, the applicant and their supporters, by their agent or their team, then withdraw from the room, and it is a private discussion between the 3 panel members and the solicitor. So there is nothing, as far as the decision that's concerned, that is held in a public forum. So that's another reason why members don't have to be concerned or worried about, getting something wrong, making the wrong decision, because the solicitor is there to answer any questions before the decision is actually finalised. Right, if there's no other questions on that, we will move on, Josie, to item 8, the revised gambling policy, the statement of principles from page 10 to 55.
Thank you, Chairman. So the purpose of this part of the meeting is to consider the consideration of the Council's revised gambling policy statement of principles following the consultation. So a little bit of background, which you'll probably remember from last time, is that Section 349 of the Gambling Act 2005 requires the Council, which is the licensing authority, to prepare and publish a statement of principles under the Gambling Act. That it proposes to apply in exercising its licensing functions during the 3-year period to which it applies. The statement will last for a maximum of 3 years, but can be reviewed and revised by the authority at any time. This authority's current statement took effect in January 2019, and the required review process must be completed by the end of 2021 to enable publication in January 22. The Gambling Act 2005 places the responsibility for the licensing of gambling premises and the issuing of gambling permits with local authorities, with the associated responsibility of ensuring the conditions on these licenses are upheld. Following the agreement of the Committee of the Licensing Authority on the 21st of July 2021, the revised policy was open for consultation from the 26th of July to the 5th of September 2021. The consultation was carried out in accordance with the Gambling Act 2005 using email where possible. And the draft statement of principles was also placed on the Council's website for the same period. No responses were received to the consultation. The draft revised statement of principles for the Gambling Act is attached as Appendix A. Section 154 of the Gambling Act 2005 indicates that adoption of the statement of principles for the gambling, or as we call it, let's call it the gambling policy from now on, cannot be delegated to the Committee of the Licensing Authority. Therefore, the Council must adopt the final document. If the Committee of the Licensing Authority agrees the gambling policy for recommendation of adoption by the Council, it is intended to take it before Council at the meeting again on the 9th of December 2021 for their agreement. So the options for the committee are limited as the process is legislative and dictated by the Gambling Act 2005. The Council has no discretion as to the making of the statement of principles, although there is some discretion as to the content of the statement. So the options available to the committee are: 1, to consider the revised statement of principles and approve it and refer the statement of principles to Council for adoption, or to do nothing. The authority, if the authority does not produce a revised statement of principles within the statutory timescale, there is a risk that the authority will not be in a position to process applications, leaving the authority open to challenge by persons wishing to make such applications. Furthermore, the authority will also have failed to comply with its legal obligation under the Gambling Act 2005 and could face challenge. And the other implication is safeguarding. The revised policy sets out how the authority expects applicants to include safeguarding of children and vulnerable adults under the Gambling Act 2005. So the recommendation is that the Committee of the Licensing Authority consider the revised gambling policy statement of principles as shown as at Appendix A of this report and refer the final approved policy to full Council for adoption.
See. I'm sure we all found it very interesting to read through the gambling policy. I just draw your attention to page 17, which actually lists the number of gambling authorizations, the current figures to June 2018 of the permits and licenses which have been authorized in Bretland. And once again, I can't see because of the sunshine. But does anybody have any questions? Hands up, please. No questions. Gordon, do you have anything you wish to say?
Well, no, not wishing to influence the committee. I do think this is a sensible amendment to our policies. Thank you very much. I agree with you on drawing out the number of premises that are licensed. I think that's important. I've always taken a particular interest in gambling, as you know, and I do think sometimes we have too much access to gambling in this country, but that's a matter that we're not going to decide upon. So no, I fully approve of this policy. Thank you.
Tina, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm just again pleased that we're tidying up loose ends and adhering to what needs to be done. And I thank Josie and the team for bringing it to us, and I'm happy with it.
Thank you, Tina. Josie, yes, thank you. I mean, it's like the taxi policy. It is an enormous piece of work for you to go through. Very, very well done. And I will move on, committee, to the options are limited, as Josie said, as the process is legislative. Sorry, did somebody, oh, Susan.
Just wanted to ask Josie a question. Maybe I've missed something, but as I understand, you know, for the protection of children and vulnerable people, gambling and fruit machines, that sort of thing, is supposed to be kept separate. How does that work out in pubs and restaurants where there might be children there as well? Sorry, that's me.
Okay, so there, when licenses are issued, they come with conditions. So if they have gaming machines in pubs, and they are, well, all of the gaming machines that are in pubs are for 18-year-old plus. So it is the responsibility of the manager, the DPS and the staff at that premises to ensure that no under 18s use those machines. Obviously they come with signage on them, but it's down to the staff at those premises to ensure. We very, very rarely receive intel that underage people have used machines, in which case we go in and do a compliance visit, have a word with them, check their CCTV to see whether in fact it was somebody who appeared to be under the age of 18. But they know that they can have those permits and licenses taken away from them if they don't adhere to those conditions. So they're quite strict on it. No? Yes. Yeah, they can be in that area, but they have to ensure that children do not go up to them, because one of my concerns was a person goes in with their child and say they've gone for lunch and they decide, oh, I'll just put a quick pound in the slot machine, in the, you know, the gaming machine, and they've got their child stood next to them. They can't actually do that. And the conditions on the license tell them that they can't do that. So if you see any of that happening, do let the licensing team know and we will investigate. As I say, operators are very, very aware of what they can and can't do. Could you switch your microphone on?
It's quite hard sometimes to tell the age of particularly teenagers, isn't it? You know, and I do worry about that sometimes, that maybe there are some 14, 15-year-olds that are using them, you know, and they appear to be older.
I think all we can do is they are able to card the same as they would if they were trying to buy alcohol. So it's really down to them to make sure that they are checking that somebody that's using the machine is over the age of 18. As I say, if you do hear of anything on your patch, then do let us know and we will investigate.
Gordon.
Well, yes, if I could perhaps add to what Josie said and reassure Susan. When I was a member of this committee, I did spend 2 days in this district with one of the larger gambling organisations, and whilst, as I indicated, I don't necessarily approve of them a great deal, I have to say that in their policing, particularly of the machines in their premises, and I visited, I think, 4 or 5 different premises over those 2 days, I did find the policing of the management of them was very, very good. So I had no fears then. And from what Josie said, we still need have no fears that they are being managed. The impact is very severe to a company who has its license withdrawn for these machines.
Thank you, Gordon. And as I've said in the past, that you know, members, especially members of this committee, are the eyes and ears to what goes on, you know, in your towns or your villages. And if you do have any concerns at all, to raise them with the team or get in touch with me, because much of the feedback comes literally from the feet on the ground, which is members. So yes, don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got any concerns, because it's all completely anonymous, but investigations will take place. Any other questions? Oh, well, we can move duly on to the recommendation now. Yeah, the options of the committee are limited as the process is legislative. I can never say that word. Legislative and dictated by the Gambling Act 2005. The council has no discretion as to the making of the statement of principles, although there is some discretion as to the content of the statement. So the Committee of the Licensing Authority may consider the revised statement of principle, Gambling Act, and approve it, and refer the statement of principles, Gambling Act, to council for adoption, or do nothing. And the reason for the recommendation is to ensure that Breckland Council, acting as the licensing authority, can discharge its statutory duties under the Gambling Act 2005. So committee, may I have your agreement to adopt the revised gambling policy. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, Julie? Well, Josie, thank you very much. I think we've just got to mention the next meeting on Wednesday, the 12th of January, immediately following the Licence Committee meeting, which will be held here in the Conference Centre in Durham. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, unless anybody's got anything further they wish to add, I'll say thank you to Josie.